Revenge with Karen. I knew something had shifted when the office plants started dying. I'd kept that stupid ficus alive through 2 CEOs, a ransomware scare, and 1 intern who microwaved salmon. But now it drooped like it knew the air had changed, like it could smell the smug cologne of corporate decay wafting in from Darren's corner office. 15 years I'd worked here. 15, not loud, not flashy. It was the woman who knew where the bodies were buried and who signed the forms that made them disappear. I'd saved this company's ass more times than our innovation team had pitched recycled ideas at quarterly reviews. Payroll, compliance, vendor contracts, crisis management, you name it. I was the duct tape holding the company's guts together. And then came Darren. Silicon Valley haircut. Smile like a rental car salesman. Disruptive ideas that somehow all involved firing women over 40 and replacing them with ex-frat bros in matching button-downs who called everyone chief. He walked in the front door with his oat milk latte and LinkedIn buzzwords, and within a month, he was whispering in the president's ear like some kind of career tapeworm. Oh, and hey, real quick, before we go deeper, if you're one of the 97% of people listening who haven't hit that little subscribe button yet, maybe do that now. Throw us a like while you're at it. It keeps this whole storytelling train rolling, and honestly, it makes the team behind this feel like we didn't just scream into the void. All right, back to the mess. Darren started his campaign with optimization. That was his favorite word. Never meant anything good. Started merging departments that didn't belong together, cutting long-term contractors, and bringing in his own people, which turned out to be old classmates from a tech startup that folded faster than a dollar store lawn chair. At first, he was all smiles with me. You're essential, he'd say, hands clasped like a youth pastor. We value legacy employees. I knew better. He didn't want my advice, he wanted my access. My institutional knowledge, my calendar invites and budget keys. I gave him just enough rope to make his PowerPoint sparkle, but not enough to actually tie me up with. Then came the erosion. Meetings I'd always attended, suddenly rescheduled without me. Emails I wasn't CC'd on. Projects I'd nurtured for quarters were reassigned to Todd, who once asked if PDFs could get viruses. When I questioned the logic, Darren smiled with his teeth and said, imagining workflow dynamics, which loosely translated meant, get out of the way, dinosaur. But I wasn't panicking. I was observing, watching how he moved, who he flattered, which hands he shook and which he let go. I saw how the president, once a reasonable man with decent instincts, started parroting Darren's lingo like he was auditioning for TEDx talk. Agile culture, lean pivot, ideation hubs. And I watched how the younger women in the office, sharp, smart, full of potential, started avoiding Darren's glass-walled office. I caught one of them crying in the break room after a performance review where he'd called her too emotionally reactive for leadership. She had a master's in operations and ran our entire logistics system without a single error in 18 months. Darren didn't care about results. He cared about dominance. Still, I said nothing. I kept my head down, my tone pleasant, my work flawless. Behind the scenes, I started documenting every policy change, every odd budget request, every Slack message he deleted 2 seconds after sending, every hiring conflict of interest I could sniff out with my coffee-stained gut instinct. Because I knew Darren thought he was replacing me, but I wasn't being replaced. I was being underestimated, and that was going to cost him everything. The first thing Darren did was rename departments, not restructure them, not streamline them, rename them. Suddenly, my operations and strategy division was part of growth enablement. What the hell does that even mean? One day I was overseeing compliance audits and contract renewals, and the next I was supposedly scaling customer delight. If that sounds like something scraped from a fortune cookie run by a hedge fund, that's because it was. My job title didn't change, just everything else. Moved my top analyst, Rachel, over to revenue intelligence, reporting directly to him. No conversation, no transition, just a Slack message that said, quick FYI, we've got a better fit for Rachel's talents over here. Appreciate your flexibility. My flexibility? I'd let him live this long. That was my flexibility. Then it was Javier, procurement guy who could negotiate a 5-year vendor contract with nothing but a whiteboard and a 7-Eleven coffee. Reassigned. Cross-functional learning, Darren said. Translation, poached to fill the spreadsheet-shaped holes his frat bros couldn't figure out. The worst part wasn't that they left, it was how apologetic they looked doing it. Quiet glances. Quick hallway I'm sorries, like they knew this wasn't a promotion. It was a chess move. I was the queen Darren was trying to corner. I stayed outwardly calm, too calm, the kind of calm that makes people nervous. I started color-coding my files with obsessive precision, printed agendas, time-stamped emails, meeting notes written with the clarity of a courtroom stenographer. I wasn't documenting for memory. I was building a war archive, and the president, he went from daily check-ins to "Can you give us the room?" in 3 weeks flat. Used to brainstorm solutions together, fix budget shortfalls over breakfast burritos in his glassed-in corner nook. Now, he just nodded along with whatever jargon Darren spilled across the table, like he was hypnotized by the sound of his own company being turned into a buzzword blender. At one point, I tried to raise a red flag, pointed out that Darren had approved Gala catering expenses that were 2.3x above the original vendor quote. The president blinked at me like I'd just spoken Dutch. "Maybe you're misremembering the numbers," he said, voice syrupy with manufactured patience. Darren's got a solid handle on things. Misremembering? I had the damn receipts, literally. But instead of slamming them on the table, I smiled, nodded, and added another entry to my growing dossier. Page 37, gaslighting attempt, budget discrepancy, 3:14 p.m. Darren's smile only got wider as he chipped away at my territory. Like a raccoon in a loafers and lanyard disguise, scavenging credit for anything that moved. He presented one of my legacy workflow models at a board preview as his personal innovation. I was sitting right there. He didn't even blink. The president clapped, but still no rage, not visibly. I doubled down on performance. Every report was flawless, every task on time. I greeted his every insult with the polite precision of a guillotine. The others started noticing. People who used to rush past my desk started slowing down. Some lingered a few seconds too long. One whispered, "Hang in there, we see it." I nodded, but I didn't need sympathy. I needed silence. Silence was better. Silence meant they didn't know what I was doing after hours, who I was talking to, who I was quietly looping in. They didn't see the USB drives in my locked drawer, each labeled by quarter and coded with 3-letter nicknames that only I understood. They didn't know I'd started pulling public filings on Darren's previous company, that I'd noticed an interesting overlap between our new design vendor and his ex-roommate from business school. They didn't know I'd booked a lunch with someone from the parent company's audit team, someone I once helped get their kid into a private school waitlist back in 2016. Let Darren keep playing Empire Builder. Let him poach, rename, undermine. He thought I was reacting. I wasn't. I was rearranging the pieces, quietly, carefully, because you don't win chess by yelling. You win by letting the other side think they are in control, right up until their king has nowhere left to go. I heard it through the damn HVAC vent. I wasn't eavesdropping, not on purpose. I was in the back conference room, my old war room, trying to print out a vendor contract that Darren's revenue intelligence team had somehow managed to turn into a 48-page flaming disaster of markup hell. The printer jammed, of course, and while I was elbows deep in toner and profanity, I heard his voice drift through the vent grate. Legacy employees like her. You keep them around just long enough to figure out what they know, then, poof, time for an early retirement. Gotta evolve or die, right? There was a chuckle. Male, young, new. Is she like not aware she's being sunsetted? Sunsetted, not fired, not replaced. Sunsetted, like I was a damn screensaver. That's when it clicked, not the printer, the setup, the missed emails, the vanished calendar invites. The projects pulled like rug threads under my feet. This wasn't just disrespect. This wasn't even garden variety corporate erasure. This was Darren preloading the narrative, framing me as outdated, uncooperative, difficult. He was softening the ground so when the axe came down, it'd look like my fault, like I'd failed to adapt. Cute. HR naturally had ghosted me. I'd emailed twice that week about my org chart access being revoked and the sudden change to my PTO accrual tracking. No response. The third time I got an auto-reply, "Angela is currently OOO." For the entire week. Week when Darren was very much in the office, smiling like a possum that found the trash can open. They were going to do it publicly, I could feel it. The gala was coming up, and Darren loved a dramatic close. He probably thought firing me the same night I was scheduled to receive a Legacy Leadership Award would be poetic, like putting down Old Yeller during halftime. But if he wanted theater, I'd give him Shakespeare. I started with my laptop, pulled my files, my real files. Not the sanitized junk in the shared drive, but the originals. The ones with the financial discrepancies, the event budgets, the vendor cross-references that made Darren's web look a little too incestuous to be accidental. Encrypted the drive, backed it up twice, stored one copy at home, one offsite. Next came emails, flagged, sorted, annotated. Every deleted thread, every off-the-record Slack message forwarded to my personal inbox, using a script I wrote during the pandemic when IT thought blocking downloads was cute. Then I got quiet. Too quiet. I stopped asking questions. I started nodding more in meetings. Gave Darren the I'm tired and grateful for my paycheck look. It worked. He stopped watching me so closely. Thought I was resigned. That's when I reached out to Helen. Helen's one of those people who doesn't show up in org charts, but can stop a promotion dead with a single text. She used to run compliance for the parent company before taking early retirement. I mentored her replacement, so we stayed in touch, birthdays, holiday cards, shared gripes about high heels and low pay. I sent her a short message, thinking of making a move, might have something you'll want to see first. Her response was instant, let's do lunch. My treat, bring hard copies. Then I reached out to Julian, CFO's office. Mid-level but sharp, fast, and loyal to the kind of order Darren couldn't fake. Back in 2017, I helped cover for him when an error in a forecasting sheet nearly cost him his job. Never asked for anything in return, until now. I kept it vague, need eyes on a few numbers. Quietly, you in? His reply, always. Finally, sent a burner email to a board advisor. I once babysat his dog when his housekeeper quit the morning of an earnings call. Long story, longer memory. I signed it simply, you might want to be at the gala. Second row, left aisle, and then I waited, composed, steady, like a fuse wired to the foundation of a building no one noticed was already leaning. Darren thought he was planning my exit. He didn't realize he was setting the stage for his. Met at a diner that smelled like burnt toast and government secrets. Marty was already in the corner booth, jacket off, tie askew like he'd wrestled it off mid-panic. He looked at me the way men look at thunderstorms on the horizon, equal parts awe and dread. You said it was urgent, he said, sliding me a mug without asking how I take my coffee. He remembered. Of course he did. I handed him the file folder. Thick, tabbed, color-coded. Inside was a curated tasting menu of Darren's incompetence, deceit, and opportunism, served cold with a side of forensic accounting. Jesus Christ, Marty whispered after 10 pages. Keep going, I said. It gets better around page 34. That's where the vendor contracts start looping back to his previous employers. You'll love the signatures. Very familiar. He flipped faster. Stopped. Blinked. Wait, this guy's hiring his own roommate's consulting firm. His ex-girlfriend runs the catering company that billed us $312 per guest for surf and turf. For a nonprofit fundraiser. That's double the approved gala budget. Almost triple, I said, sipping burnt diner coffee like it was champagne. He's counting on the event being flashy enough to distract from the numbers. Most of the boards too busy shaking hands to read the fine print. Artie looked at me like I'd handed him a live grenade and a manual written in Latin. Does the president know? I think he knows just enough to be dangerous. Darren's been feeding him a narrative, legacy bloat, old systems, outdated culture. He's buying the pitch because it sounds like progress. But Darren's not innovating. He's embezzling under the guise of transformation. Marty exhaled slow. You've already started your end game. I didn't reply. I just pushed the second folder across the table, thinner, glossier. Titled, Contingency Plan Leadership Realignment Proposal. You're not just burning his house down, Marty muttered. You brought the blueprint for the rebuild. Someone has to. I've already outlined a restructuring model. Minimal disruption. Cuts dead weight. Reinstates ethical oversight. Most of the board will love it once they see it wasn't their idea. You'll present it, not me. His eyes darted up. Not going to speak? Not until I have to. Right now, I'm just a legacy manager about to be honored at the gala. Wouldn't want to make waves. He laughed once. Bitter. God, I forgot how terrifying you are when you're calm. I smiled. That's when you should worry. By the time we left the diner, the sky was bruising with sunset, and Marty's phone was already buzzing, probably cross-referencing vendor INs with internal disclosures. He didn't say goodbye, just grunted and drove off like he was headed into a war he didn't plan on losing. Back at home, I lit a candle. Not for drama, for ritual. Then I finalized the dossier. Everything I'd been gathering over the last 2 months. Darren's hiring history and known associates conflicts of interest across vendors, tech platforms, and consultants' budget discrepancies tied to the gala, travel expenses, training retreats that looked suspiciously like golf weekends emails, showing directives were written after approvals, screenshots of Slack conversations that self-deleted. But not before I ran my scraper. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't petty. It was clinical. Each file had a label. Each label had a date. Each date had a number that linked to one of Darren's paper cuts across the company's trust. And when you added them up, it told a story, one that ended with him walking out. Not waving, not smiling, just gone. The last thing I did that night was print 2 clean copies of the dossier. One for Marty, one for the CEO of the parent company. He didn't know he'd be attending the gala yet, but he would. The gala smelled like desperation and over-budget champagne. Crystal centerpieces glittered under rented chandeliers. String quartet playing some soulless corporate arrangement of Fleetwood Mac. Waiters in bow ties serving lobster bites to people who called themselves thought leaders and hadn't thought an original thing in years. I wore black, not the cocktail kind, not sequined or plunging or flirty. No, I wore executive black, structured, clean, quiet. The kind of black you wear to boardrooms, funerals, and coupes. People smiled at me as I entered. The kind of tight-lipped smiles that say, "Heard you're on the way out, but I'm too much of a coward to say it out loud." I smiled back. I was serene, ice-slick, untouchable. The event was Darren's baby, his vision, his chance to show the parent company that he could elevate the brand, whatever the hell that meant. He was everywhere, posing for photos, shaking hands with donors, playing MC like he was hosting an awards show instead of an evisceration. My award was scheduled last. Legacy leadership recognition, slot reserved for the person everyone pretends to admire but secretly believes is a relic. A ceremonial pat on the head before pushing them off a cliff. And Darren, bless him, couldn't resist the drama. I was standing in the wings, behind the velvet curtain, reading my speech one last time, not that I planned to deliver it, when I heard his shoes. Loafers. Cheap leather. Confidence borrowed from a title he hadn't earned. He leaned in like we were old friends. "Enjoy the spotlight, Nora," he said, voice syrupy. "Because it's your last time under it." I turned. He smiled, so pleased with himself. "You're done here, just made it official. HR will send your paperwork Monday." I didn't blink, I didn't flinch, I just nodded. "Oh," he added, "I'll be accepting the award on your behalf, but feel free to say a few words. Closure and all that." "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't want to rob you of your big night." He smirked, turned, disappeared through the curtain. I waited 10 seconds, breathed, then smoothed the front of my jacket, stepped out from the wings, and walked straight to center stage. The room was packed. Board members, clients, donors, staff, champagne flutes frozen midair. Darren halfway to the podium, mic in hand, confusion flickering behind his smug little eyes. I took the second mic from the hostess, smiled warmly. "Good evening," I said. Quick correction to the evening's program. Silence fell. Dead, total silence. Even the string quartet stopped mid-note. Apparently, I continued, tone light as air. "Our VP of Growth Enablement has decided I'm, quote, done here, effective immediately." He wanted me to know right before the speech, which I thought was a nice touch of symbolism. A ripple moved through the room, gasps, shifting chairs, the sound of champagne being set down very carefully. Darren was frozen, mic still in hand, face somewhere between "oh shit" and "this wasn't in the script." And since he's handling HR now, I added with a half smile, "I suppose he thought he could handle this too." That's when I saw him back of the room. CEO of the parent company, black suit, no tie, leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting for his cue. I hadn't told anyone he was coming. He stepped forward, walked past startled donors, past frozen executives, straight down the center aisle as if he owned the oxygen in the room. Darren stepped back, clearly confused, tried to gesture at the CEO like maybe he could explain this away with a firm handshake and a LinkedIn buzzword. But the CEO didn't even glance at him. He walked directly to me, took the mic gently from my hand, turned to the room and said, "Actually, Darren's done here." The floor dropped. Someone gasped. Someone else dropped a glass. Darren just stood there, mouth open, no script, no backup. I stepped aside. Calm, centered, focused. Let the CEO speak. Let the board whisper. Let the room tilt on its axis. I had done what I came to do. The moment wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just precise. And the night was only beginning. The seconds after the CEO spoke stretched out like molasses over broken glass. "Actually, Darren's done here." That sentence cracked through the ballroom like a bullet made of ice. Could almost hear the oxygen evacuate people's lungs. Glasses paused mid-toast. Forks hovered midair. Someone in the back coughed like it was the only sound left in the world. Darren, he didn't move. For the first time since he strutted through our doors with his gelled hair and empty briefcase, he looked small, not defeated, not even angry, just confused, like a golden retriever that accidentally walked into the wrong wedding. The CEO turned to me, just a glance. He addressed the room. I'd like to thank Nora for 15 years of unmatched service, and I'd like to apologize that her dismissal was neither authorized nor appropriate. He said it without raising his voice. No theatrics, just fact, corporate execution with surgical precision. I could feel the blood rush to my fingertips, not from fear, from adrenaline. Vindication is a strange kind of high, not warm, not celebratory, more like clarity with fangs. Darren finally found his voice. Wait, I think there's been some confusion. There's no confusion, the CEO said, cutting him off without even looking his way. I've reviewed your recent hires, your expense approvals, and your misuse of delegated authority. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Please return your badge and company property before leaving this evening. The "this evening" landed like a slap. He didn't say Monday, didn't say let's schedule a conversation. He said now. A black tie gala, in front of the board, the donors, and the servers passing shrimp cocktail. Security didn't rush in. They didn't need to. The pressure of silence was enough. Darren opened his mouth again, then closed it. His face flickered between fight and flight, but couldn't land on either. A moment later he turned, no eye contact, and walked stiffly toward the exit. Nobody clapped. Nobody stopped him. CEO handed the mic back to me. The stage is yours if you still want it. I looked at the crowd. Their eyes were on me now, not as a relic or a placeholder, but as something harder to define. Something they didn't expect to survive the purge, let alone stand tall above the wreckage. I raised the mic. I had a speech, I said, smiling thin. It involved some fond memories, a few thank yous, and a tired metaphor about torch passing. I think we're past all that now. Few scattered chuckles. Nervous, but real. So instead, I continued, I'll just say this. Leadership isn't about volume or spectacle, or flashy rebrands and bloated galas. I looked out, let my gaze pass over the board members, the execs, the employees who used to whisper hang in there in hallways. It's about stewardship, about knowing where we've been and having the guts to carry it forward without selling out the foundation. That foundation is still here. I'm still here. Then I stepped back, not dramatically, not teary-eyed, just enough to let them sit with it. Let them feel the tectonic shift that had just taken place beneath their catered feet. The CEO nodded once, and then applause, not polite, not forced, slow, building. It started on the left side of the room, Julian from finance, Helen's protege, one of the junior project leads, and then it spread like fire. I didn't smile. I didn't bow. I didn't need to, because I hadn't just survived Darren's coup. I'd outwritten his entire playbook, and the next act was mine. Darren made it halfway to the double doors before his ego caught up with him. He spun around, red-faced and puffed up, voice shaking just enough to betray the panic under all that performative confidence. This is a misunderstanding, he barked, gesturing like he was calling a foul at a pickup game. This is political. This is retaliation. The CEO didn't blink. He simply reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, pulled out a manila envelope, and opened it like he'd been waiting for this exact tantrum. I thought you might try this, he said. Calm, clean, clinical. So allow me to read just one paragraph from the internal review we conducted. He unfolded the first page, cleared his throat, and spoke with all the warmth of a guillotine. Page 9, Section 3. The Vice President in question authorized the reallocation of funds totaling $183,472.84 to a vendor registered under the name of a former business associate, without proper disclosure or board oversight, and in direct violation of Fiscal Protocol 11B. The room went dead again. Someone gasped, probably from legal. The CEO folded the page, slid it back into the envelope, and nodded toward the back. Security, he said, not barked, not shouted, just said it, and two men in black polos stepped out from the wings like the universe had rehearsed this moment in advance. Darren looked around like someone might stand up for him. No one did. He turned toward the president, his former ally, puppet, shield, but the president looked pale. Hands clenched on the tablecloth, eyes cast down like a man watching his own career bleed out in front of a crowd. Darren's last stand was pitiful. Are we seriously doing this here? In front of everyone? His voice cracked at the edges. This isn't due process. The CEO didn't even raise his eyes. Your badge, Darren, that was it. Security didn't manhandle him, just escorted, one on each side. Like ceremonial dishonor guards at a very quiet, very public funeral. Doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. Then the noise started. Not clapping, not murmurs. The first wave was board members pushing back their chairs, some headed toward the CEO, others toward me. Half looked furious. The other half looked like they'd just seen the second coming of fiscal accountability. Nora, we need to speak. Why didn't you bring this forward sooner? Who else knew? I kept my voice low. Measured. I said the same thing to each one. I brought it to the right people. At the right time. Some respected that, others hated it, but none could argue with it. They had the dossier now. Marty had passed it out like communion wafers in the back of the room. Page after page of documentation, vendor histories, bank account cross-references, Slack logs that had been deleted but archived through my fail-safes. No emotion, just facts, just math, just receipts. I didn't gloat, didn't apologize. I let the silence do what silence does best, trap people in the echo of their own choices. The president tried to approach once. I turned away before he got within 5 feet, not because I was angry, because I was done. He'd stood by while Darren dismantled the company's ethics brick by brick. And now he wanted absolution, a handshake. He could retire with his pension and his guilt. That was his reward. Me, I wanted peace. And maybe a long bath. The time I left the ballroom, my heels were silent on the carpet, the kind of silence that feels like justice. Not victory, not revenge, just alignment. The wreckage behind me was no longer mine to manage. Let the suits sort it out. I had other plans. The email went out Monday morning at 7:06 a.m. Subject line, Leadership Transition Update. Body text, effective immediately, President Ronald T. Wilkins will be stepping back from his duties due to ongoing health-related stress. We thank him for his years of service. Health-related stress. Translation. He saw the ship tilting and jumped before it sank with him in the captain's chair. There was no press release, no photo montage, just a sudden quiet where his calendar used to be and a discreet removal of his nameplate from the executive directory. Word around the building was he was still available in an advisory capacity, which is corporate speak for he's home in slippers watching reruns and praying nobody subpoenas his inbox. By 10 o'clock a.m., I got the call. Not an apology, not even a formal offer. Just a simple, direct line from the CEO himself. We'd like you to assist with operational transition for stability. I waited a beat. Let the silence hum. I'll need full access, I said, and autonomy to restructure. No middlemen, no shadow puppeteers. There was a pause. Then, understood, so I walked back in. No fanfare. No escort. Just me, a black notebook, and the unnerving stillness of people who now looked at me like I might be bulletproof. My old office had already been cleared. The intern, one of Darren's last vanity hires, had left behind a potted succulent and a branded water bottle filled with what I can only assume was ambition-flavored La Croix. I tossed both in the trash and reopened my file cabinet like I never left. And then I got to work. First, Darren's strategic hires. One by one, I pulled their files, reviewed qualifications, tracked invoice trails, matched timelines. Half of them weren't even showing up to meetings, just forwarding decks from third-party consultants who billed us more per hour than the lawyers cleaning up Darren's mess. I revoked their access by end of day. No speeches, no theatrics, just a digital leash yanked clean off. Next, the budget. I flagged every bloated event cost, every rebranding initiative Darren greenlit without oversight, every suspicious line item labeled executive consulting, handed finance a corrected ledger with notes so sharp they should have come with bandages. Then, the people. Not the ones who stayed close when things got ugly. They were easy. I pulled them in quietly. Gave them tasks, listened to their insights, reminded them what institutional trust felt like. No, the ones I watched closely were the weather vanes, the ones who'd praised Darren in meetings and emailed me condolences after his fall. To them, I said nothing. Gave them clean slates and rope. How they use it is their business. By the end of week 1, the tone in the office had changed. Meetings started on time. Emails got shorter. People stopped covering their mouths when they whispered. I didn't make a speech. I didn't post a memo. I didn't revamp the mission statement or install bean bags in the break room. I just worked, and they noticed. because competence doesn't need a banner. It just needs a moment. I finally had mine. The conference room was colder than usual. Frosted glass, soundproof walls, 10 chairs, one pitcher of untouched water, and a silence that felt less like anticipation and more like judgment withheld. The kind of room where decisions happen that don't get emailed out, where futures are redirected with a nod. The CEO sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, no preamble. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Let's begin." One by one, read off the points of the new leadership structure. Titles shifting. Oversight chains tightening, budgets realigning. The company, he explained, was entering a new phase, one where strategy was not just marketing spin, but actual operational scaffolding. One where accountability wouldn't be optional. And then he looked at me. "We'd like to offer you the newly established role of Chief Strategy Officer. You'll report directly to the board." And only the board. No applause, no gasps. Just the collective stillness of people who suspected this was coming and now had to adjust their posture to it. I didn't smile. I didn't hesitate. "I accept," I said. That was all. No speech, no dance. Just a pivot point disguised as a sentence. They moved on to the next item. Budget realignment, department reviews, but I wasn't listening. I was already working, mentally opening tabs, filing pieces, executing plays I'd designed in my sleep. By week's end, I made my first official move. I reinstated the mentorship program, the one Darren had gutted because he didn't believe in legacy ladders, the one that had helped 3 women in accounting get certified and 2 ops associates transition into leadership, the one he said didn't align with our agility roadmap. It was back, and bigger. Then came the purge. Quiet, surgical, no pink slips. No public firings, just a ripple of revoked credentials and redirected workflows. Darren's inner circle, his hallway echo chamber of yes men and LinkedIn cheerleaders, found their calendars empty. Their Slack channels archived. Their influence evaporated. They weren't fired, they were erased. And in their absence, real work began. Processes that had buckled under bloated jargon started humming again. Junior staffers started speaking up in meetings without glancing over their shoulders. New intern program was approved. A burnout relief initiative fast-tracked. No one thanked me. They didn't need to. I wasn't there for applause. I was there to correct the program. That's exactly what I said at the close of our next quarterly planning session. I stood, closed my laptop, looked around the room and said it's simple, steady, final. Let's correct the program. No fireworks, just a recalibration. Just a woman in black taking back what was hers. One decision at a time. Fade to black. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.